Welcome back for Big Money Business. Yes, it's the console wars, in the way that we enjoy covering it, which is taking a look at how the companies are actually doing through their financial reports. So, yes, it is Xbox versus Sony, and we're going to be able to learn a few interesting little things about how their two very different business models are actually performing in the real world. So, to kick it off with Microsoft, 166% increase in Xbox hardware, because this is a quarter where new consoles were being sold, whereas this time last year, it was the twilight of the Xbox One. But they say they are shipping more Series X and S's than expected. The demand is continually outstripping supply. So we do have a situation right now where both consoles, even though the PS5 is doing better, both consoles are supply constrained, not demand constrained, and that is a pretty damn good place to be in. I mean, overall, chip shortage sucks, but, you know, if you're the company, you're at least going to be happy that you can sell everything you make. Now, for Microsoft, their overall gaming revenues increased 16%. Now, services, content and services only grew 2% compared to 30% last year, but according to Microsoft, that was down to a decline in third-party game sales that basically offset any growth in the first-party sales and also in Game Pass, though they didn't really comment specifically. Now, there's also the recent thing we learned where Game Pass actually did not hit its growth target. Its growth target was 47.79%. It got 37.48%. Now, that still is a really nice increase, but it's not what Microsoft wanted. You see, previously, they had a 71% target that they smashed with 85.75% growth. But that was pandemic. You know, that was a time where I think a lot of people just wanted to, get a gaming library very quickly, and obviously Game Pass was the ideal way to do that for so many people. Now, to go to other things then, turns out Microsoft's a really, really big company with a lot of money. Overall revenue, 22% to $45.3 billion. Operating income's up, net income's up. The personal computing segment that includes Xbox had a 12% revenue drop. Now, their expenses to operate increased 15%, but apparently that's been driven by the ZeniMax acquisition, so, you know, that's Bethesda, etc., etc. And their cloud revenue was also up. Now, it's the sort of annoying thing where Microsoft is such a big company that we don't actually get to hear all of the Xbox stuff that we want. I think the one thing, though, that we all know is that Game Pass is absolutely the core of their business model, and that is where we hear that 38% growth, but we don't really have any numbers of, you know, from what number has it grown by 38%? What does it really mean? What is really going on? Now, back in January, they said they had passed 18 million subs and that Xbox Live had over 100 million MAUs. Now, we haven't really heard much official since. There were rumblings of 23 million Game Pass subscribers as of April of this year. But again, nothing was ever confirmed. And it is funny, you know, I think about peak World of Warcraft and it's 12.1 million. And, you know, here we have, that's Blizzard in one game many years ago. And, you know, here's Microsoft. Sure, they've doubled that, but they're Microsoft. They have the console. They have all the money in the internet. I think it just does go to show how completely outsized the success of World of Warcraft was initially. Just when you think about that in terms of sub numbers,
yeah,
wild. But to get back to the story though, now of course everyone's favorite CEO gaming muscle man Strauss Zelnick, he made a big joke of claiming the service had reached 30 million. Subs, seemingly to mess with Phil Spencer. That was a bit odd. Then Jez Corden, who said the 23 million in April, recently said that he heard between 25 and 30 million, closer to 30 million. How do you really know? Microsoft basically don't want us to really know that, because as soon as you know that, you can extrapolate exactly what's going on with their business model, and, you know, just too much info can get out, and obviously, a company only wants to share the info that's actually good. You know, that's why if you're ever given a growth rate instead of a hard number, it's like, you know, how is this being fudged with? How should we think about this? Overall takeaway here basically is the growth explosive? Seemingly no. Are the consoles doing well? Yes. Is Game Pass doing well? Yes. You can basically see that their whole business model is succeeding. And if you look at the recent things that have came out of Microsoft Studios, Age of Empires 4, very well received. Coming out today, in fact. And then Halo. Very positive campaign impressions. Very, very positive multiplayer. So, and then of course, what happens in Fable gets talked about and the other things they've got in the pipeline. And then for all of that Game Pass stuff, well, what happens when, it's the next Elder Scrolls and Starfield are available with a massive tie-in promotion?
I think that's what I'm really keen to see is what does that growth look like? Because obviously we won't hear for a while unless they pass something amazing and decide to tell us. But what does Game Pass subscribers look like after Halo? That's going to be the first big sort of number of holy shit, this actually works. But actually looking at these results, seeing them talk about third-party sales being down, that actually kind of inspired a weird thought in me, because it was when we were talking about Back 4 Blood, I kind of put forth the notion that Game Pass doesn't translate to Xbox sales on PC. It translates to Steam sales because people are trying it on Game Pass and then buying it on Steam. That's like a possible pipeline. And even though the Xbox Game Pass does give you discounts for Xbox games on the Xbox app on PC, that doesn't have the platform, that doesn't have the community, that doesn't have the features. So I wonder if Game Pass is actually going to manifest in a real dampening of third-party sales, at least on their PC kind of side of platform, or a little bit something like that. But it's also one of the downsides of them kind of going, we're everywhere, because they just don't have the third-party weight behind them, which is, if they're going to be underselling the PS5, then, as we'll see shortly, Sony will have the control of the third-party market. I think that's interesting, where they rely on third-party for Game Pass, but they've also kind of shifted to the weight a little bit too heavy to first party for actual game sales. I think that's an interesting. So I'd love to be able to ask Phil something like that, just to see if where I'm batting is anywhere near the truth.
Well, I mean, it's no terrible thing if somebody purchases Halo Infinite on Steam after trying it for £1 in a trial month. They're still going to get 20% of that money.
Yeah, but what if they try Yakuza on Game Pass and then buy it on Steam? Then there you go. That's not any money going to Microsoft.
But I suppose they're just going to see that as a cost of acquisition for subscribers.
Yeah.
I imagine they've got a very interesting set of databases and spreadsheets that are crunching all of these numbers.
Love to see them.
Oh, yeah. You'd love to get some of the back-end business analytics for some of these companies. It'd be insane. Next up then, Sony. Let's take a look at how Sony are doing. So, one thing we do like about Sony is they give us specific numbers. So, as of the end of September 2021, the PS4 surpassed 116.7 million lifetime units sold. If you're ever confused why Horizon Forbidden West is coming out in the PS4, I think that number might have something to do with it. Now, the PS5 is then shipped 13.4 million lifetime units. It is off to a banging start, especially considering the very, very challenging manufacturing market that they're in right now. So 3.3 million PS5s and 0.2 million PS4s were purchased by retailers during the quarter covered by this call. Revenue is up 27% over last year, driven, of course, by PS5 hardware and third-party software sales, which partially, offset a noted decrease in first-party game sales, which is obviously to be expected when you look at their slate. Now, the hardware being down for the PS4 does make sense, but the fact that the PS5 is actually sold at a loss does mean their profit is down by around 202 million, but they still made 728 million in profit, so I'd say they are happy enough with that. Now, as for PS Plus, it has 47.2 million subscribers as of the end of September, with PSN having 104 million monthly active users. Of course, you can't really, sure, you do get free games with PS Plus, but you can't compare that one-to-one with Game Pass, because of course it's Xbox Live Gold that gives you the multiplayer stuff, and if you want to play a PlayStation game like a Battlefield with your friends, you're going to need PS Plus. So a more apples-to-apples comparison would be PS Plus versus Xbox Live Gold, and we don't have that number to do that comparison. Again, and if we did have that number, and Microsoft's number was lower, then that would be sad faces. So that's why they're not giving us those numbers. You could imagine. Anyway. 76.4 million software units, 7.6 million first-party games. It's a lot of vidya. It's a lot of vidya. Now, for their strategy. Until now, it had been a very big first-party release thing, right? And that's been good for them because their first-party games have generally been fucking awesome, right? They've got Forbidden West, they've got Ragnarok coming up, but they are going to need more. And that's where we go on to the state of play. Now, here's the thing about the state of play. Like, there's one of the games I saw everyone just go Z at it. It was the one where it was like the action game. It had the sort of tilt shift effect on its map. You were, I think, supposed to be like a delivery guy, but then you're sort of pulled into some sort of eldritch nightmare.
Deathverse?
Yeah. I really liked that. I thought it looked great. And it was just seeing all the Z. It kind of pisses me off, really. But I suppose that's more a manifestation of, I think some people expected FF16.
Yep.
And I think generally more lofty expectations. Sony basically didn't really set expectations ahead of this event. And I think that basically is the issue there.
Yeah, it's kind of made worse because they had, their PlayStation.com/game upsites or websites. They had updated quite a bit. Like games like FF16 had a back-end update that people noticed, went, oh, hang on, what's going on here? And then people drew conclusions. But it's the thing where I think Xbox now, especially, is it Aaron Greenberg, their community manager or whatever head of product he is? He would usually do a lot of tweeting going, hey, listen, this isn't going to be here, this isn't going to be here, these will be. And they didn't do that. Where they actually should maybe start doing that now, because I think people were, Jeff Keighley usually does his, hey, on Twitter, rate this between A and D. And it was primarily D, because everyone's like, there's no games there I cared about. They're like, well, that's kind of on the state of play for not telling you what games are going to be there.
Yeah.
Because nothing was really a surprise. And it's awkward, especially, it's just insane. It's insane
that's I think that music game really got
We Are OFK.
Yeah, because like the start of that was like sort of trying to, I mean, I didn't really think it was super funny, but it was like trying to take the piss and be a bit meta of like, oh hey, we're in a state of play, which that maybe would have worked better if that was a state of play that had FF16 and had some of those big things, but then it had that unfortunate thing happen where it tried to do that, but the state of play generally wasn't super well received by people. So, you can see how they wanted the stars to align. You can see how the stars did align, but not really in the way they would have wanted.
Yeah, I think that's a thing where if people expect something, but then they, like, if they expect something good and then they get something they don't want to see, they're just going to be angry as a result instead of being generally happy. Because the thing where We Are OFK will definitely play extremely well among the audience it's intended for.
Definitely.
But not to the... I can't remember how many people watching, but the 100,000 plus of people who are paying attention for something. You
slap that in a wholesome direct, it's going to do great. I think you slap that where, in a place where people are more used to like their big blockbusters, then it's not going to do as great. And maybe there's just some of a mismatch there. Generally, some of those indies work best when they are, maybe filling some space between the really, really big things and when people are already made happy by those big things. So the indies can just be the weird, different thing that's maybe interesting, but you don't really mind if it's not interesting to you because you've already been satisfied. That's, I guess, the big thing of putting a massive spotlight on a niche product in a very general audience presentation that doesn't really have the goods to satisfy the general audience in the first place. So definitely somewhat of a misfire. But when you think more broadly about third parties, one of the things that's really important here is like the network effect. Because if your friends, like even if the Xbox Series X was the more superior console to play, I don't know, Battlefield 2042 or the new Call of Duty, if all your friends have a PS5, you're probably going to want to get the PS5.
Yeah, of course.
Now, of course, this sort of thing, crossplay, whenever it's available, does help to eat away at this problem. That's perhaps one of the reasons why Sony haven't liked crossplay, whereas Microsoft have historically very much liked it. It's because, if you are the market leader benefiting from a massive network effect and it's a walled garden, you don't benefit from opening up your walled garden.
That's why they charge for it.
Which is why they charge for it. Yeah, so it's interesting there as we see these two companies navigate the space with two very, very different strategies and attitudes. Now, I guess the other thing to talk about then, Sony are making the move onto PC. They're just doing it very slowly. And I think they're doing it in an interesting way, because this is a way to get God of War into the hands of PC gamers with a version that, has a bunch of enhancements and is a cheaper price than, what it would be if you're buying, a new one on one of the consoles. So that's, a really great deal for PC gamers. But, of course, all those PC gamers are then, in a year or two, they're going to be like, Ragnarok? Oh, yeah, I probably won't be able to play that in my PC for 4 or 5 years. And, you can be pretty damn sure that well, basically they're doing this really smart timing strategy to make a bunch of money off the PC market. I mean, as is their right with their games that they've made with their own money, but to do so in a way with the timings that just as a PC gamer has really enjoyed. Zero Dawn and God of War. Oh, there's a new one of both. It's on the console. I need to get that now, especially in a bloody market where the cost of a GPU that is as good, if not a bit worse, than a PS5 costs the same as a PS5 because of the goddamn shortage. In which case, you can see this is a great way to make money now and also convert PC gamers over to their platform.
Yeah, it is it's a strategy that feels so bad by comparison to like the Xbox strategy of play whatever game you want wherever you want. We'll let you have that freedom, but it is like business wise, it is undeniably genius.
Yep.
And it's a case where, I mean, it's even the fact that people are really furious, like because the game is better, technically speaking, on the PC platform with like God of War has DLSS. So people just play it at 4K, handy enough, which is way better than ran on the PS4 and on better hardware because of DLSS. So on worse hardware than the PS5, you'll have a decent enough experience. And people are actually mad, but that shows how strong that first party is, where other people having access to the game is making people who played it early angry, which, as stupid as that sounds, ultimately you've got this setup where now you're actually kind of going, oh, here, we can just create super fans and make a ton of money in the process. And ultimately, those new super fans will end up feeling thankful in a way because this is a PS4 game, this is a PlayStation Studios game, and they've graciously allowed it to go where they want to play it. And you're just going to have this, like, the stars have aligned so perfectly for this strategy that it's almost frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, fair play to them.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good plan.
It is.
Now, in terms of just other things, the final thing to mention, which we hadn't really got to in the channel, but there is the acquisitions they've made: Housemarque, Nixies, Firesprite, and Bluepoint Games as well. Those have been acquired. That's driven a 20% increase in their developer workforce, and their CFO said they plan to continue to aggressively invest in development capacity capability going forward. So you basically just see both sides stocking up this big friggin' arms race of just the most premium developers they can find. It'll be interesting to see it play out. I will say it is nice to see the market opening up. We are seeing more cross-platform games. We are seeing more cross-play happening. I think it is driving innovation in a business model in a way that is right now fairly oriented towards consumer value, at least in this big space, in a way that doesn't feel as scummy. Because the one thing I think you can say for a lot of these first-party games is they don't try to fuck you over. They're not doing an Ubisoft and selling you an XP boost as much, right? So that's why I like to see this type of competition, and I get sort of frustrated when I see the third parties just try to like suck up as much as they possibly can. I mean, I get they're going to do that as a business, but it feels like they do it in a way that burns through their IP and their goodwill, and probably a net loss over time. But there you go. I think we've talked about some financials, which I think more are just a guided discussion of what the hell's actually going on with these consoles and these companies.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's that. Let us know. Where are you feeling on this? Thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.